This is Teacher's Corner from Stenhouse Publishers. I'm Nate Butler.
When we're building understanding, there needs to be both number knowledge and there has to be strategy. And so what happens is eventually we hit a number knowledge plateau to where we can't build on our strategies. But then if you don't have the strategies, then you can't build new number knowledge.
And that's Graham Fletcher, author of the highly anticipated Building Fact Fluency, a toolkit for addition and subtraction, coming this fall. In Building Fact Fluency, Graham helps students learn their math facts by developing conceptual understanding and procedural fluency at the same time. This comprehensive toolkit provides everything a teacher needs to help students develop number sense on the way to fluency, from cards, games, and videos to online resources, a facilitator's guide, and hundreds of highly engaging activities and tasks. With publication of Building Fact Fluency just around the corner, we're revisiting an earlier episode from about a year ago featuring Graham and editor Tracy Johnston-Zager discussing the thinking behind the project. I'm
Tracy. I'm one of the math editors at Stenhouse, and I'm here with my friend Graham Fletcher.
Yeah, super excited to be here. I guess we're here talking about something that's true to both of us and something that we're both super passionate about. So fact fluency. So
Fluency.
Yeah, and so it's, I guess, when you ask, like, hey, let's talk about this. It's nice to just sit here, chill, chat, and just talk about some of the things that we've come across over the last couple of years.
Totally, because Graham's the author, I'm the editor, and we're buds and have been for a while. So this project is a happy place for the two of us. This collaboration's so fun, and we wanted to let people know how it's going, what we're working on. So let's talk about what it is. What is the project?
So basically, it's going to be like a fluency kit. So one of the first things, like, why? Why do we need this fluency kit? And so I guess one of the things that we've been talking about a long time is it doesn't matter what grade you're in. Both of us have been all over the place, and no matter the number of teachers that we talk about, it always comes back to fact fluency. Like, our kids just don't know their facts, and it doesn't matter if you're in second grade or you're in sixth grade or if you're in high school. We still have kids that are using the same counting on strategy that they were using back in the 80s, that they were using back in the 50s, and but we keep doing the same thing.
Totally.
So it's definitely like, what can we do that's different, that's going to help support this move?
And I think one thing we both have noticed is it doesn't really matter what curriculum people are using. Like, when I go present, people say, okay, that sounds great to me, but what do I do about my facts? Like, the kids don't know their facts. And I say, tell me what you're doing. And I hear a whole range of things people are doing, from more prescriptive stuff to more inquiry-based stuff. And nobody feels like their kids are getting to a place of automaticity. And I think some people wonder, like, should the kids get to a place of automaticity? Like, they're worried that it's a bad thing to talk about automaticity. So I think you and I both agree, like, no, actually they should. But how we get there is the key.
And I think that's part of I think we have so many good resources out there, but they're all in different places.
Yeah.
And so there's no coherence. And I think the true key to building automaticity is through a coherence of understanding. One of the biggest misconceptions that I've encountered, I know we both have, is how to learn our facts.
Yeah.
Right? And so like most of us as adults, we're taught to just memorize our facts. And I can even remember my dad saying something way back in the day where it's like, you need to memorize harder. Like, for real, like you just can't memorize harder, right? It's like go faster, go harder, memorize harder, and you can't do it. And so, like, I would be that kid that would always be like, with my multiplication facts, I'd never get past the threes.
Yeah.
And then with the Sunday, I'd only get the bowl.
Yeah.
And a lot of our students feel as if they're not good at math just because they don't have their facts.
Totally.
Which is totally crushing to me, and I know as you as well, especially when we want our kids to feel safe in classrooms.
And I think people haven't known what tools are there. Like, aside from, there's a lot of talk about not using a stopwatch anymore to teach math facts.
Amen.
Like, that's what we had, were stopwatches and flashcards and mad minutes. And there's a lot of really good research saying we don't want to do it that way. But then people are saying, okay, well, what do? I care about conceptual teaching. I care about sense making. How can I teach facts?
Yeah, and I think one of the big changers for me was my daughter, who's now in 7th grade. When she was in 3rd grade, at the end of the year, all the kids in 3rd grade who knew the multiplication facts got a certificate at the end of the year. And so my daughter, she gets it. And so she got her multiplication facts, and there was about 8 of them. But then I'm thinking about the other 15 kids in her class who don't get their certificate, and now in 3rd grade they think that they're not numerate. Like they don't understand numbers, so now I suck at math, and now they're done.
Yep.
All because of a time test, which is crippling.
Totally.
And so, some kids will be okay. Some kids can memorize their facts, but the majority of kids need to build it properly. And even with memory, like if you forget your 8 times 7, like 8 times 7, what do we typically do? Fall back to rote counting.
Yeah.
Skip counting.
When we first started talking about this project, I told Graham, he gave an Ignite talk a long time ago about the difference between knowing something from memory and memorizing it, and that's what came to mind for this kit. Can you explain what the difference is?
Yeah, and so I start thinking, like, when you hear the terms memorize and then from memory, yes, they both have like the root word memory in there. But a lot of the times, if kids when we all learned our facts, we learned them from memorization, which is just that rote process. And when I look back now and I think about it, like we're asking 6, 7, 8, and 9-year-old boys and girls to memorize 100 facts. Like just take a step back and think about that. So that memorization it's actually, it takes a lot of brain capacity in order to memorize, and it can be really tedious to some kids. So, but then how does that look different from memorization from memory? Well, if we build fluency from memory, it's built through a learned experience. It's where a student might go ahead and understand a strategy, but that strategy is used repeatedly over time to where it can appear as if it's memorization to so many on the outside, but what it really is it's rapid retrieval of a strategy that they've used over and over and over and over again.
Totally. So then it's hardwired and they can recall it at will, but it's because they understand it. They learned it by understanding it.
Right. So then that student who doesn't know their 8 times 7 fact, if they forget it, they can go, well, I know that 7 sevens is 49, and then I can just go ahead and add on another 7 to that because they have that flexibility. And I think that whole idea of from memory, it really gets at what the heart of fluency is. And I think we could ask 20 people what the definition of fluency is, and we'll get like 75 definitions, right?
Yeah, totally.
There's it's all out there. But when we go to what NCTM talks about it and how they define it, it talks about looking at a student who's accurate, flexible, and efficient as well.
Susan Jo Russell coined that a ways back, and it's still my favorite. I think about it like a triangle. You got to have all 3 parts, and we just focus on that accuracy so much, but not an efficiency. We care about speed, but that flexibility piece is, you don't have understanding if you're not flexible with it. So
absolutely. And I think about a lot of the times, like when we're building understanding, there needs to be both number knowledge and there has to be strategy. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is eventually we hit a number knowledge plateau to where we can't build on our strategies. But then if you don't have the strategies, then you can't build new number knowledge.
So this is making me think about number talks, because one thing we talked about early is, like, those of us who I think would call ourselves, I don't know what we call ourselves, progressive in the math movement. I'm not talking politics. I'm talking
I got you. You're good.
Within math education, we want kids to understand and have agency and feel good and develop good identities, strong identities in math. When people say, okay, if I'm not supposed to do timed tests, I'm not supposed to do that mad minute anymore, what should I do? And the answer's kind of been number talks. And we both love number talks. But we talked early on about that it's not enough to get the kids to automaticity. Why is that?
So, well, one of the things, like I even know, like as a third grade teacher of so many years, and I think like students will know the strategy, but what ends up happening is they only will ever use that strategy in number talks. So one of the things that I've realized over time is that as much as we both love number talks is a piece of getting to automaticity. It's one of those pillars. Mm-hmm. And so like I would have kids that would be able to go ahead and know like their make a 10 strategy. But then, and they could use that with their number talks, but then the second that we put it in some kind of contextualized situation, they would completely forget. And I'd be like, what are you doing? You didn't use your number talk strategy. Well, the problem is that they never really build that to a point, like they never practice it in context. Totally. So it's just that naked number talks, and then the strategies only ever live in number talk world. Yes. It doesn't live in math world.
So when we started brainstorming what should go in this kit, we wanted to keep that conceptual stuff from the number talks, but to have enough practice for kids to get to a place of from memory. So why don't you talk about some of the things that are going to go in the kit? What are the core pieces for kids?
So one of the things that I'm most stoked about, like super pumped about, is number talk images. Like, one of the things that I love with you and your Twitter feed is how you always just show these bright, beautiful pictures. And you and Pierre Tranchemontaigne from Montreal with Number Talk Images, phenomenal website.
Totally.
Those colors, and it's just so vibrant. And now kids don't get bogged down in numeral, they get bogged down in context because they can talk about what's there. Also comes back to Christopher Danielson's book with How Many. Like, let's just show a picture and let's just talk about what we see. And so now numbers are not just numbers on a board. Numbers are now in the screen. They're in that image, and so now it's mathematized. So instead of just having one single image, well, we know how Number Talks has a number string where there's a sequence of equations or of expressions. Well, what I'm doing is creating these Number Talk images where it's a series of 3 to 4 pictures that actually build on one another. So one of the examples that I think we both like is the lemonade.
It's the lemonade. It's so pretty.
Yeah, and so it starts off to where there's one yellow and one pink glass of lemonade, and then the next image will be 2 yellows and 2 pink glasses of lemonade, and the next one will be 3 and 3. And so they're using that context of lemonade to help build an understanding.
And we both are super passionate about access to math for kids, and so one of the beautiful aspects of the images is there's no text and there's no language that's a barrier to access those pictures. And like where I teach, there are a lot of languages spoken, and the teachers there are really excited as they're trying this out that the very first picture is just so simple, and you can start with what do you notice and what do you wonder and what are these things, and come up with the words for kids who might not know what lemonade is or whatever the context is. We were really careful to pick accessible context for everybody. But you might have that conversation and build the vocabulary before there's anything formal or symbolic introduced. So, like, what are some of the other contexts? We have lemonade.
Oh, we have marbles. One of my favorites as well is apples.
Yeah.
Just seeing green and red apples together on an apple mounting thing that you'd see in the grocery store.
Totally.
And they're just so bright that kids want to talk about them.
And that one's in the doubles plus one strategy, and it's so beautiful to see as the number of apples grows. You see this thing about when it's a double, the rows are filled, and when it's a double plus one, there's one sticking out. And I just know it's going to lead to a great conversation about evens and odds as part of doubles plus one, and that's so exciting to me about where that might go for a teacher.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important piece, and I'm glad that, that's always a good reminder. A lot of the times we dive into the math per se without ever making sure that every kid has access to the math before we even start talking about it. So having the images there and say, let's just talk about what we see, and then now once we have an understanding of what a marble is, because we have so many kids that are from all over the place, and maybe they've never seen a marble before. But now if we show them a picture of a marble, the word marble no longer becomes a language barrier for them.
That's right.
And they're picturing those images. And so you'd have the Number Talk images, but then you also have an anchor problem. So we'd launch each week. So the way that the kit's actually kind of worked out is that we're going to have an addition and subtraction kit, and then we're also going to have a multiplication and division kit. And there's going to be, for each of the strategies, there's going to be 3 different contexts. And so within each context will be the theme for a week. And with that, you'll get, there'll be the Number Talk images that we were just talking about, but then also an anchor problem. So a very rich problem. But now when kids are working through this anchor problem, what they'll be able to do is go back to the number string images, and they're now picturing those glasses of lemonade, which is awesome, because so many times, you know as well as I do, and I think for everybody out there, we drop word problems on kids, and the first thing that kids do is they go right to the numbers because they can't relate to the context.
Right.
Well, now that we've primed the pump with this Number Talk image, now kids are picturing those glasses of lemonade, or they're picturing the apples, or they're picturing the marbles as they're working through the context.
Yes.
And then one of the things that I'm really excited about with the kit is the contextualized purposeful practice, to where there's I guess CGI has been an absolute game changer for me. Like
So that's cognitively guided instruction, and we love the book Children's Mathematics, especially the second edition. And where they talk about the problem types, and their problem types are baked right into the Common Core standards and other standards, and so that we should be asking kids all the different problem types, like a joining problem where we don't know the total at the end, or a joining problem where we don't know what we started with, but we know the change. And so if you might have heard it with, I'm thinking about folks listening, and I might have heard different words for it, but those are the problem types that we're talking about.
Right, like we're really good as teachers asking A plus B equals that unknown number.
Right.
But we're not very good at asking, well, the unknown number plus A equals B.
Right.
And so, but having those, so now what we'll do is so say if our theme is doubles for the week, well, the number talk image will go, number talk image string will go to the theme of lemonade, and then the anchor problem goes to the theme of lemonade. And then the entire problem type table from the cognitively guided instruction, that every one of those problems in there is grounded in the context of lemonade. And then so you can use those throughout the week as just that purposeful practice, to where now kids are taking the number string, but now they're actually practicing that double strategy in context, which is really missing. I think that's been a big missing piece in many of the resources that are out there, which I think really created a big need for this.
Totally.
And then
well, and you're so thoughtful. I mean, this is why I knew Graham would be amazing with this project, because he's so great with multimedia and contexts, and like if you've done any of the 3-act tasks, you're just so creative at thinking about what situation might surface a particular piece of math. So I just want to make sure it's clear about what's a strategy and what's a context. So if the strategy is like making 10, that's a strategy we really want kids to have. You've chosen 3 contexts to photograph, right? Do I have this right?
Yeah.
And so that there are 3 unique times where we have a whole week's worth of stuff around making 10 with 3 totally different contexts. So we get to come back to it all year long. We get to interleave that practice and have a variety of contexts. It's not just lemonade for doubles. It's also a whole bunch of other things. We've got eggs, and we've got markers, and we've got all these other things that Graham's been filming, seashells, so that there's a whole variety of real images that kids can connect to for each context, each strategy. Sorry.
Absolutely. So like even like for pizza, the example for pizza is I've cut up 2 pizzas, both into 10 slices, and I leave one pizza with 9 slices in it, and on the other pizza there's 6 slices of pizza. So now when we say how many pieces of pizza are there, well, kids will say, well, I take 1 slice from the 6th slice, give it to the 9th slice to make a whole pizza, and I've got 10 and some more now.
Right, which is such a great way to build that teen number structure.
Unitizing.
Yeah.
So like we need 10 pieces make a whole pizza.
Totally.
And we just have way too many kids that are leaving kindergarten, first grade, and second grade without this understanding of unitizing, which is why they have a really difficult time applying that make a 10 strategy or pretend a 10 strategy.
Totally.
So then so yeah, I'm really pumped about the contextualized problem types. But then on also somewhere in the middle of the week, what we do is I strip away the images of the lemonade, and now I replace the lemonade with like red, yellow counters. So now kids, when they look at red, yellow counters, they're going to image those red and yellow counters as the cups of lemonade that they saw on Monday. But then on Friday, instead of using images now we go to a number string. So what's beautiful about this, and what's great as I start messing around with kids and seeing this, is we start with the glasses of lemonade on Monday. On Wednesday, we represent the lemonade with counters, and then on Friday, we represent it with numbers. And so we're gradually stripping away the context so that when kids see numbers, they're actually really still seeing those lemonade.
And we're making all those chances for connection across representations, and from the symbolic to the context, but also like kids are building a much more robust mental set of images around what's going on.
Yeah, and then just the application of the same understanding in multiple different venues, I guess. It just allows for that flexibility that memorization doesn't allow for.
Totally. And also we keep mixing it up. So to be clear, if a kid uses a different strategy on the 9+6, I don't know if I can think of, that doesn't seem like one where they would, but there's somewhere, like often with Make a 10, If it's
Like 9 plus 9.
9 plus 9, they
Yeah.
might make a 10, or they might think of that as a double. And in this kit, both of those are great, right? It's not like, this is doubles week, you're only allowed to double.
Yeah. And I think that's a really big piece, right? Because a lot of the times, like, and let me be crystal clear here, I'm super guilty of this as well. I'm like, today we're going to work on our double strategies, and then everybody has to do doubles.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we brainwash kids to see doubles, but it's us owning the doubles understanding, and it's never them having ownership of it. So there's a minimal retention there,
Right.
as kids are working through it. So I think that's definitely a really big piece about it. So as much as you might want to see doubles, we should never tell kids what they can see.
Totally.
I think that's a big piece.
Totally. And we want to just keep building bridges from their strengths to other new concepts. And so some kids really love doubles, and other kids are like, they want to go to those 10s faster, and both of those are correct. And having them discuss, well, I did it this way, well, I did it that way. You can have really productive relationship building.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then what's nice about it is, as kids are working through all this, like sometimes like they're problem solving here, they're looking at images, but then there's also a game for every single week.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing.
Kids love games, right?
Yes.
And so now we have a doubles game. So the kids will work through the anchor problem, they'll work through the number image string, they'll work through the number image string with tools, then they'll work through the CGI problem type tables, the contextualized problems, and then they'll do the number string, and then you have a game. And so, and it's that game that you could even send home with your kids.
Totally.
To where now, like, what's homework? Games.
And these are real games, by the way. I just, like, it's such a pet peeve when we call a worksheet a game. Like, we make it, like, oh, it's supposed to be fun, but it's not actually strategic. And the games that I've been reading, that Graham's been making, are genuinely fun. I have to tell you a story. I didn't even tell you. Cassia saw the doubles game, and it's this board with all these different numbers on it, and you're trying to get 4 in a row or 3 in a row.
4 in a row.
Four in
Yeah.
a row. And so you have to be strategic, and you roll, and you can double the number, or
You can
keep
double the number, you can go double, you can roll. So you say you roll like a 10.
Yeah.
You can either go doubles,
Yeah.
10, you can go doubles plus 1,
Yes.
doubles minus 1, doubles plus 2, or doubles minus 2, depending on what number you want to cover on the board.
Totally. And there was, in one of these games, there was a number on the board that wouldn't have been possible to roll.
Yeah.
And Cassia was like, my friend Cassia Wedekin, fellow editor, she said, why would that be on the board? You can't get that. And I was like, right, because it's actually a game. It's not just a worksheet that you're filling out by coloring in 4 in a row. Like, you're like, oh, the 17 or whatever it was going to be hard to get. I'm going to try this part of the board. And so it's actually engaging for the kids. There's real thinking going on.
And so one of the things that I've really tried to be intentional about when creating the games is I am not... I know you did a talk a while back in Boston, and one of the things you talked about was student choice.
Yeah.
And so I think student choice needs to be applicable across multiple different things. And so in every single game, it's like I'm just going to go ahead and say it, I really hate the games where kids just roll and move.
Yeah.
Kids don't need to play snakes and ladders,
No.
but we have so many snakes and ladder-like games, like roll and do this, roll and do this. And so what I've tried to do is kids roll, but then they have to apply a strategy to it. So there always is a choice built within the game to where now there's a strategy. So it's not just roll and do this with a rote thought.
Roll and record.
It's roll and record game. So we want them to roll, and then we want them to have to apply a strategy. And then what that does, which I really like, is it opens us up as the questioner to say, can you tell me why you did that? And a lot of the times we don't ever allow ourselves the opportunity to climb into student thinking when they're playing games.
Totally.
But it's very telling.
And one thing I love about the games is they're introduced within the strategy of the week that we're working on, but those games can stay open all year, and so they make this great opportunity for mixed practice. Because one thing Graham and I have talked about is like, we tend as teachers to want to say, right now what we're working on doubles plus 1, and everything's doubles plus 1, and then we drop it and we don't do it again for months and months and months, and the kids forget it, and when they see it in the wild they don't do it, right? So we're looking for like mixed review and things to circle back around all the time, so that the kids aren't just doing it the way they think the teacher wants them to because it's written on the like students will be able to double, you know what I mean? Like on the
Right.
board, like we tell them which strategy to use, we take all the fun away. So
Absolutely.
by keeping those games live and re-entering some of the games throughout the year,
Right.
kids will have to keep on their toes, which is how they actually build that retrieval.
Yep.
If they have to think about it harder.
And I think that's an important piece to consider, because a lot of the times, like no matter what resource you're looking at, and this is where I think sometimes we need to be a wise consumer with the resources that we're bringing into our classroom. Like you have one lesson for doubles, and then the next day you go to doubles plus one, and then the next day you go to make a 10. And
Whiplash.
you're not. And so kids are all like they're mucking about with all these strategies in their head, and they never make sense of any of them.
Right.
So like it can never be like a one and done.
Yeah.
Like my wife has to tell me things like 40 times in order for me to automatize her thinking.
Poor Whitney.
Yeah, absolutely. But so I think one of the things that's really nice, and then we went back and forth with this conversation, is do we want to do like keep those 3 contexts for doubles? Do we want to do them back to back to back?
Yeah.
But what we're ending up doing then is we're going to do it spiraling.
Yeah.
And so we're not expecting it. And now when I look back at it, it was like it would have been ridiculous to go 3 weeks of just doubles, and then
Right.
as much
so
as
they'll be interleaved. Like
Yeah.
we'll kind of scramble the strategies so that they keep coming back around, and they keep shifting, and the kids keep
spiraling.
having to think about it as it goes. Yeah.
Absolutely. So like
And they'll be spaced also. Like so, if all the doubles are at one time, I read this book, Make It Stick. I know some people have read it. It's so interesting. They talk about massed, MASSED, like massed practice versus spaced practice, and it's really important to space it out so that you have to kind of almost forget a little and come back to it. Because if you just cram, it's like in college, we would cram for the test in a really short amount of time and then forget it, right? But if you space out that practice, if you studied better than I did in college, you would get to finals and not have to cram much because you had been really laying it down. So we're going to be spacing and interleaving. And one thing I love about that, we have a lot of mobility in our district, and so I don't want a kid to have missed a strategy if they join school in November. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like we'll be coming back around all the time. If kids are coming and going, that's okay. They'll get opportunities.
So I guess we could look at it as kind of like an automaticity muscle. Like if you're working out at the gym, right? Like you don't go pump iron one time and you've got like bulging biceps.
I tried that. It's not working yet.
It does yet. Well done, nice play. And so what I think then like what you're doing is you're stretching them, but then you've got to give it rest.
Yeah.
And then you stretch it a little bit more, and then you give it rest. And so when each time that we come back and we're spiraling, well, we stretch their automaticity muscle just a little bit more, a little bit farther, to the place to where like they're Arnold Schwarzenegger and they're just bulging with muscle.
Totally. So one thing we've been talking about is like how a teacher, different ways teachers are going to use this. So it's definitely laid out. Like if you're a first grade teacher, and if you want to use the addition subtraction kit, you can be using it every week, really all year. It can be how many days a week, how much time do you think? What are you thinking?
So as we start playing around with it and field testing it, and I think what we found is that I would hate to go ahead and say it has to be done this way, because no one resource knows your students that you're working with better than you yourself. Like you're the expert of your kids.
Yeah.
And so what we want to try and do is leave as much flexibility and autonomy at the building level, at the school level, in the classroom level, at the intervention level, however you want to use it. So I really see the scalability of this. It could be used in first grade, and you could do a little bit every single day. If you're in fourth or fifth grade, maybe this is something that you do one day. Like you have a day where you're building that purposeful fluency, but then also in middle school. Like we've talked to so many middle school teachers, and it's the same thing, high school.
Yes.
But what I think what we've done to not be really intentional about this is that it's very grade neutral.
Yes.
So like it's not cute for first grade.
We will not be designing this with crayon and googly eyes.
No.
Because those middle school teachers will say, I cannot teach my content standards because the kids lose track of the problem. They have to go back and rederive 5 times 4 every time, right? So they're like, what could I do that would be a short, effective intervention to get kids up to speed on their facts? They really need them. So we didn't want to design something that would make that 6th grader feel like they're put in baby math. You know what I mean? Like that's very demeaning. And so we wanted something that would, like as we're designing the project, we're thinking about how to make it accessible for kids across grade so that the pictures are warm and inviting for those first graders, but also kids of different ages or who've had interrupted schooling or, I think intervention teachers, like a first grade teacher might use it for 38 weeks, but an intervention teacher might do a quick, 6-week intensive in small groups, which is part of one of the things we could talk about some of the pieces of the kit. These beautiful images are going to be projectable so that everyone can see it in a large group, but we also are going to make a tabletop flip display chart.
Right.
Those are all the words I can think of to describe it, so that you could pull a small group wherever you are and they could all see the image and you could talk about it there. So we're thinking a lot about usability. We want it to be user friendly.
Like a little tent.
Yeah.
Like a little tent where they can flip the images over, because we know sometimes if you're an intervention teacher, you get stuck in a room that doesn't have a projector.
Totally.
So we
the
want
hallway
or the hallway,
yeah.
That's your superpower. You do what you have to do wherever you have to do it, right?
Right.
And so we don't want anyone to say, well, I can't do that because
Yes.
I'm trying hard to make sure that there is no because.
Totally.
And so I think, and as much as we want to make learning accessible to kids, we want to try and make this as accessible to kids and as many teachers as possible as well.
I could see teachers using this in a push-in situation, in a small group in the classroom, in a pull-out situation. I could see people in summer school, in tutoring, and at home. There's so many different ways people might use it. And so we're thinking about, as we write the user's guide, which Graham is working on right now.
Yep.
He's thinking about there might be some example schedules, if you have this much time, you could do this. If you have that much time, you could do this. And I think we'll try to generate some ideas, but none of those will be rigid because we both believe so much in teachers being decision makers. So it's
Absolutely.
some suggested pacing guides, maybe with some flexibility. But our field test teachers, right now, we're saying what's working well. What are you trying? Are you finding it's better to start with the number talk image, or is it better to start with the contextualized problem? Or try it both ways. Try different opening questions, and
Right.
we're getting great feedback from them on how they're using it. They're really excited.
Yeah, so we're basically finding all the glitches, screwing up, seeing what
Yeah.
works, seeing what doesn't work, and so that way, by the time that it gets to you, we can say, listen, we truly wholeheartedly believe that this is what works, and it's
Totally.
up to you, but you still have that flexibility and the autonomy to do however you want to do it.
So we've talked a little bit about the student-facing materials. We've got the images that they'll see. We have anything you would need for the games. We'll have whatever dice or cards you need, the game boards.
Yep.
And all the problems and all that stuff. But there's also a whole teacher-facing component. So there's going to be videos, users' guides, help with assessment. So let's talk about some of that.
Yeah, and so I think about a lot of the times we get so many resources, but the problem is it's support.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the times the support resources that come along with what we're trying to put into our classroom are either too wordy, it's not enough, it's not clear enough. So I'm writing this as if I would want to read it as well. So there's not going to be a whole lot of print.
Yeah.
What's really going to be is my goal is there will be a user guide, kind of how to use it, but then the big piece for me is I'm going to go and capture videos.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I loved about this when we were teaming it up, and I'm super thankful to you and the Stenhouse team, is I don't want to go and have some basically fixed video that's not I want it to be as raw as possible. So if a kid's picking his nose in the video, we're not editing that out.
No, we're not.
Because that's what happens in a first grade classroom.
Totally.
So it's going to be
Hands
me
down the pants, man. That's
Yeah.
what happens in a first grade classroom.
Absolutely. That's a go-to for sure.
Yeah.
And so but that's it. Here's the thing. You don't have 5 hours to read a user manual. So I'm not going to write a 5-hour user manual. You don't have 20 minutes to sit down and watch a video. You have 3 minutes to watch a video as you're leaving like basketball practice going to gymnastics. So I'm trying to create as much to where it can be consumable by you on your end. You're okay, well, what does a number talk image lesson look like? Boom, pop open the video, check it out. Okay, great. I've seen Graham do it. Now I can go ahead and do that. So basically what we're trying to do is lay just the supports that you need to just basically take this thing and go with it. And I'm hoping that you're not going to be selfish once you do try it, you come back and share with us, because we're super excited about this.
Yeah, we've talked about, and Graham's going to have videos where he teaches how to play all the games. And you might watch that video and then teach your kids in the way you want how to play the games, in a small group or in big group or however you want to do it. Or you might just show the video and say, Mr. Fletcher is going to teach us how to play this game now. And just a quick 2-minute video is enough to get the kids started on the game.
Absolutely. And you know what? Whenever possible, I might just step aside and shut up and let kids talk and let kids teach kids. Like, imagine that, kids teaching kids how to play a game. Like, as teachers, sometimes we just need to set it up and just get out of the way, and kids will do a lot of the driving of their own learning. And I think,
you see why I have the most fun job in the world? Like, look at that. I love that idea. Let's do that.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
Okay, so there's a little, there's something that we just got to. So it's going to be kids teaching kids how to play the game. Like, I just need to shut my fat mouth and let 6 and 7-year-olds go ahead and do it, because
Totally.
that's what we want. Like, that's it.
We want that agency. We want kids to feel, if we're contrasting this with how humiliating it was with the Mad Minute or the march across the room. Like, Christopher has told me the story of
Christopher Danielson.
There's a clothespin across his classroom, and your name was supposed to move across the clothespin as you mastered your facts, and he got like 30% of the way there and never got all the way across because of the way that they were assessing the facts. The man has a PhD in mathematics. It never slowed him down, but he likes to think about relationships, and he didn't care about quick recall, and so he didn't do well on that teacher's test. And thankfully his identity remained intact, but lots of kids get crushed by that. So we're trying to do the opposite of that everywhere we can. So I love this, kids teaching kids in the videos. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's a big piece. And I think one of the nice things that will also happen is, as kids are playing, like it comes back to that opportunity to engage kids in questions. And to be honest, if I screw up in a lesson, I'm not going to delete that, but what I'm going to do is then I'll follow it up with like a metacognitive thought after that. You know what? I'm leaving this video as it is because I want to show you where I screwed up so you don't have to make the same screw up.
Totally.
And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is being vulnerable has really allowed me to grow. Like, basically, you tell me a lot of things that I do it wrong, right? But that's the thing, though. Like,
but I say it in a nice way.
You do say it in a nice way, but I think about it like if I would much rather screw up publicly in front of adults than screw up privately in front of kids. Yes. And I think for too long we've been okay screwing up in front of kids, and we don't make ourselves vulnerable enough to learn in front of our peers. And so I think that's part of the community that we're of now. Like, let's screw up before we get to kids. So if I screw up, I'm not going to delete it. We're not going to run the video 17 times so it looks super polished, because well as I do, you see super contrived videos and you're like, that's not how it really happens. Totally. These are not going to be contrived. They're going to be raw. They're going to be ruthless, but it's what really happens in a classroom. And I think that's how we all learn and grow, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. That makes me so happy.
Yeah. So who knows what we have? We'll start videotaping here. I guess in the next month and a half, start putting together all the teacher resources and supports and things like that.
Yeah, and we're like deep in the logistics of, even like the other day, the production team said, okay, what kind of container are you thinking for this whole thing? Because there's a lot of multimedia, there's video, there's the table display. We're gonna have, what we think we're gonna do for the game boards is we'll have a nice permanent game board that's durable for teachers, and then each person will have a unique access code where they can get the PDFs and they can print multiple copies so kids can mark them up if it's a game board where they write on. So we're just thinking a lot about what, like, it's so fun to think about what would be everything a teacher would need to teach addition, subtraction. And one thing we talk about a lot is like curriculum. So people have this whole range of curriculum, and some curriculum has fluency practice as like a separate thing, 12 minutes a day or whatever fluency practice, and some it's supposed to be emerging. And we're hoping to design something. I mean, we are designing something.
We are. Yeah. Like, we're knees deep in the work now. Totally there's no turning back.
It doesn't matter what curriculum you have. Like, you might swap out a fluency thing, but also thinking about those CGI problems. Like, this is your content standards. Also, you're teaching addition, subtraction, conceptual understanding, and so. It's going to be something that I think teachers will be like, I have time for this. This is really so many of the things that I need to teach. And we're going to think about how to make, like, I think what we'll do is we'll look at some of the common curricula that's out there, and we'll say, if you're using this, you might want to swap it in here. Like, we'll make a crosswalk document for folks.
Absolutely.
We haven't even talked about that too much, but it's something that came up at editorial last week. We were talking, I said, I think teachers will need that. And we're also hoping to get to equip teachers to have the research base so that they can prove why these materials are research supported, and so they can use them in title and intervention situations. And so we're just trying to think about all the work we can do so that teachers don't have to.
Basically, this will be like, my goal is for it to be like the one-stop shop.
Yeah.
You open it up, and what will happen then is when you open this up, you're gonna be like, well, my resource doesn't do this, my resource doesn't do this. And then what we're going to find is that there's a lot of holes in terms of how we build fluency.
Yeah.
And so, and there's lots of, as I said, there's lots of good things out there, but in terms of having it all in one place with fresh ideas to where the context is for, what I love about this the most is we're building fluency through context.
Yeah.
And for too often, fluency has just been a bunch of naked numbers on a card or on paper, but nowhere in the world do you see a 5 floating around.
Yeah.
You see 5 apples, right?
Yeah.
Like you see these things. And so why are we trying to have kids build understanding with just number when there's number everywhere around us and it doesn't look like a numeral?
We're already starting to cook up ideas for the multiplication division one of like things that naturally come in arrays and things that naturally come in groups, and how will we be, it's gonna be so much fun to dream up that one.
And I think that's funny because like you've been really bugging me for a long time to write a book, and and I
Which
guess
you loved. You loved that.
Yeah, I guess that's what editors do. And so what I've realized, like, and I've always said from day one, I'm like, T, I'm not writing a book. I'm not like I'm the guy that skipped typing class in high school, and I suck at typing. And so it would take me years. Like this would be a lifelong project.
Two finger
Like
typing.
I can throw a third finger in there sometimes. And so and so the big thing with that is like I said, like, I'm a project guy.
Yeah.
I like creating, like I need the creative juices going, and I think this really just hits the nail on the head.
It plays to all your strengths. It's such a good match.
And we're having fun. Like, so here we are laughing, talking about fact fluency. Like, normally that's tears for a lot of, like, but I'm super excited about it.
Do normal people don't talk like this?
I don't think so, but that makes, weird is normal in our world.
That's
so yeah.
totally true.
But I think one of the big pieces where I think we also miss out is that I'm excited about is the whole idea of assessment. And so
yeah, we should talk about that.
Yeah, and so I think it comes back to the story of my daughter Emma. Like these time tests, they are a crippler, and I know Joe Bowler has done so much work on how time tests and Mad Math Minute build math anxiety in our kids. And at the end of the day, we shouldn't have kids crying in math class.
Nope.
And that to me is the most mortifying thing in the world. And I'll be honest, my first couple of years of teaching, I did it. And if I could just go back and hug and love on those kids and say, I'm sorry I screwed you up so much.
I feel just the same. Kathy Seeley wrote a great essay called Faster Isn't Smarter. And she talks about sitting next to this kid who like breaks the pencil tips off during the Mad Minute and can't get it all done in time, but then later on in a word problem totally knows all their facts. And so it's one of the things that's frustrating about those time fact tests is we don't get quality assessment. We don't, because of the anxiety level, we don't even know what kids know. We think it's an assessment, but it's not, because they choke or they get, my younger daughter says, like, everything just goes blank in my head and I'm just looking at the clock. I can't think about math at all.
Yeah.
So we are thinking a lot in this kit about how will you know what facts your kids know without that kind of stress.
Absolutely. And I think anyone who kind of knows your work and my work is we're obsessed with student thinking.
Totally.
Like the only way to move student thinking forward is to look at what they can do, right? Like looking at their thinking, and once you find out where their thinking is, it makes it so much easier to move their thinking forward. But too often it's like throwing spaghetti to a wall just hoping that something sticks. But we want to be super intentional and super purposeful.
Yes.
And I don't think you're not going to learn from a number being written on a paper what a kid's thinking. So with the assessment, I'm creating an interview. But here's the thing, you have 26, 27 kids in your class. You don't have a time to sit down there with every kid for 15 minutes doing an interview in a real world. So for me, one of the things that I want to try and do is I want to be able to sit down with a kid and know within like 2 minutes how they're doing on their fluency through 5, how they're doing on their fluency through 10, and how they're doing on their fluency through 20. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's another thing that we also have is there's a lot of differentiation built into within the kit, which is solid, because let's be honest, if you teach 4th grade, you don't teach 4th grade. You teach 10-year-olds who function at a kindergarten through 8th grade level. So it becomes really important to just sit down, listen to student thinking so that you can move it forward. So it's going to be a quick little interview that you can sit down, just maybe putting two addition facts in front of them and just saying, tell me what this would be.
Totally.
And so there's no pressure. And you know what? Sometimes some kids don't talk to an adult at home, and they don't talk to an adult at school. They get spoken to from adults. But sometimes when we can sit down one-to-one with a kid, you know, I always think about some of the pictures that I've seen of you, like with your book, like where you're just sitting down and you're listening to kids. And I think too often we do too much talking and not enough listening. So
absolutely. But I love that we're making it practical. So I was just giving a talk about workshop, and in it Nancy Atwell talks about how her knees gave out after a while of crouching down next to kids. So she had like a kindergartner-sized plastic chair that was really light, and she would carry it around the room, and she'd pop a squat next to kids' desks and say, how's it going with their writing? And I think about that kind of a level of conference of a minute, 2 minutes, you ask a few questions, like maybe they come to you or maybe you go to them, and you circulate around, you listen to 6 kids that day or something like that, and it takes you literally 8 minutes to do all of those, and you've checked in with kids and you're getting good data, you know where they are, but it's actually part of the learning and the work. It's not extra, and it gives that information we need without like extra worksheets. Oh my God.
yeah,
That's we assess through worksheets in math facts, and we've got to move away from that.
I've found the more that I talk to kids, the more addicted I become to talking to kids.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, just listening to their thinking. And so that's what we really want to do. But let's be honest, if you have a class of 27 kids, it's hard to talk to every single kid.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good resources out there that assess, but what it does is it requires that you sit down for like half an hour with each kid. Now you're going to learn a lot from that, but realistically that just turns a lot of teachers off and say, I can't do that. So how do we make accessing student thinking more attainable for us as teachers? And I think that's our goal.
Then it's genuinely formative assessment. You're listening to kids, and it's guiding your instruction, and it's building the relationships with the kids, and it brings joy to your life and connection, and that's the money right there.
That's it.
That's it.
Find out where their thinking is so you can move it forward for
Totally.
sure. So yeah, it's definitely exciting. So yeah, and so one of the things that I'm pumped about, I guess the kit's going to be ready in 2020. So we're shooting for next fall, like August or September of 2020, and then we're going
as fast as we can. I mean, I know people want this as fast as possible, so we're hoping to get it in production by the end of the year this year. And there are all these pieces to manufacture, but we'll be going as quick as we can. We know people want to start the year with it, so we will try as hard as we can to get it for start of the year.
And so,
I know where you are in Atlanta. You start in what, July?
Almost, yeah. Pre-planning starts the second last week in July. We start the first week in August. So
yeah, that's tough. But we'll try our hardest, and then while that's in production, we'll be working on multiplication division. It'll follow during the school year.
And then that will definitely follow up within the school year. But my goal is that you might not have to wait until next year. So my goal is I'm going to start dripping out some content. Like if you're anything like me, if you see something and you want it and you can't wait, but I'm going to go ahead and create some other ones, and I'm gonna kind of throw it out there so that you can just even go dabble into it yourself. And give it a whirl, and I think that's it. So you can kind of get a taste, and then you're gonna want more for sure. But we're super excited because whether it's addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, something's got to change. But we keep doing the same thing, and that part's tough.
I genuinely, when I think about the impact this project is going to have, it blows my mind. I can't think of anything we could do that could make such a measurable difference in kids' lives in math class, because this is, you talked about Bowler and fluency without fear. I did a lot of research on math anxiety, and it comes up like 40% of the time with people when they have math anxiety, they talk about math facts. So if we can, for all those kids, if we can have this be a positive, it'll go throughout the year, it'll be varied, it'll be engaging, it'll be interesting, they'll be learning, it'll be conceptual, they'll be getting enough practice to get to that automaticity without pain,
Absolutely.
That I'm just really excited about the potential for what we're doing together.
Yeah, it's nice when you get to team up with your best friend and start knocking your heads together and winning. So it's
I'm so glad I kept nagging you, buddy.
Yeah. I'm glad you didn't make me write a book.
No, I never would.
So
there'll be a user's guide. We'll call it the user's guide.
Absolutely, yeah, I can do that. I can write a user's guide. That's definitely attainable for sure.
Yeah, with lots of video. It'll be great.
Nice. Nice.
So thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited about it. Thanks for the opportunity to you and the whole Stenhouse team. It's going better than what I could have ever imagined. Like for us to just be sitting down at a table chatting like 2 years ago, and then boom, look at what we got right now. And I think we're both super proud of the work, and we just can't wait to get it out in front of kids and teachers.
Building Fact Fluency, a toolkit for addition and subtraction, ships this fall and is now available for pre-order from Stenhouse. Head over to stenhouse.com to preview sample lessons and videos. I'll leave a link for you in the description of this episode. And you can catch up with Graham online at gfletchy.com and Twitter at gfletchy. That's GFLETCHY. And that wraps up another episode of Teacher's Corner. Check out our website at stenhouse.com, where you can find podcast archives, book previews, study guides, and more. If you haven't done so already, we'd appreciate it if you can take 1 minute to give us a review at Apple Podcast, Stitcher, or whatever podcast player you use. It means a lot. If you've done so already, thank you. Please consider sharing this with a friend or colleague who you feel could get something from it. And as always, thank you for listening, and if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Send your thoughts to us at marketing@stenhouse.com. Until next time, stay safe and healthy.